Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining. We will get started in just another minute or two to allow everyone a chance to join. Thank you for being here with us this afternoon. Thank you again, everyone, for joining us. By way of a quick introduction, my name is Brittany. I'm the Economic Resilience Director at the Miami Foundation, and we're leading a multi-year effort to help support historically underserved small businesses and nonprofits with asset building through facilitating their purchase of critical business assets. This includes things like technology, equipment, machinery, inventory, vehicles, all the way through to commercial real estate. This program was made possible by a $20 million investment from the Wells Fargo to the Miami Foundation, and we will be distributing this money throughout the course of the next 2 years through 2024. There are 4 other U.S. cities who are in the Miami Open for Business, the Open for Business program alongside Miami. And to support the Miami Foundation with lending and issuing grants to nonprofit or to for-profit organizations, we are partnering with the community-based financial institution Partners for Self-Employment. Community development financial institutions are similar to banks in that they extend loans and other business offerings to small businesses and households, except they may approach a different underwriting process, and they may issue loans using different criteria to make sure that underserved entrepreneurs and families can get the capital that they need. I will talk a little bit in a moment about how and when you'll reach out to Partners for Self-Employment for this funding opportunity, but we wanted to be sure to set the stage for how and why this initiative came about. In terms of the run of show for today, we'll spend at least the first 15, often 20 minutes sharing some core details about the program, and then we will open it up for questions. Many of the questions that you may have about these offerings are already answered throughout the course of the presentation. However, if you have a question, you can please feel free to put it in the chat or to raise your hand. We will be sure to open it up for ample time for Q&A. That said, if your question is very, very specific to your particular business or what you're planning to submit a funding proposal for, we do ask that you send us an email with more details so that we can help provide some more individualized assistance. If you are a nonprofit organization that's looking for a micro grant, you will email the Miami Foundation. Whereas if you are a for-profit business, small business, and you are looking for information about a grant, you will email miamiofbloans.org. If you are interested in a loan, you will email miamiofbloans.org, irrespective of how your organization is incorporated. We'll share a little bit more detail in a moment about where you will apply based on your organization's type. Si usted está aquí buscando toda la información sobre el programa en español, por favor, indíquelo en el chat para que podamos ofrecer esta información en español. Tenemos todos los documentos y también las solicitudes disponibles en español. Si por favor, indíquelo en el chat para que podamos ayudarle en español. So again, this is going to be an info session completely in English, but if you do need to access Miami Open for Business materials in Spanish, let us know. So the Miami Open for Business program is proud to offer 3 core financial products, the first 2 of which will be our focus of discussion for today. We are offering nonprofits and small businesses microgrants so that they can buy hardware, software, or equipment and machinery that they might need for their business. The idea being that these grants will be provided or paid to a vendor on your behalf so that your business can own more of your own assets instead of leasing them or having difficulty affording them. I'll go into much more detail about what constitutes a piece of technology or equipment and how you will apply for this funding opportunity. Each year, we anticipate awarding $800,000 to a variety of organizations, both nonprofits and small businesses. The second financial product that we are offering through Miami Open for Business is a very, very low interest patient financing form of loan, our Asset Building Loans for Entrepreneurs Fund. Both small businesses and nonprofits can tap into the loan fund for the purposes of buying a vehicle or purchasing inventory, renovating or remodeling your space, refinancing predatory debt that may have been taken on for asset building, financing the succession of a business from one owner to another, or converting the business to a worker-owned co-op. Each year, we will lend a total of $2 million to a variety of small businesses and nonprofits. The last and third financial product coming out of Miami Open for Business, we will not talk about today. We've had some separate info sessions to discuss this. If this is something you're interested in, collective commercial real estate ownership funding, we encourage you to visit our website, check out the funding guidelines and the info session slides that were presented. In essence, we will be providing up to $500,000 per transaction subject property in the format of down payment and closing cost assistance. This is an initiative that is redeemable in separate selective neighborhoods in Miami-Dade County, and we anticipate extending a total of $2.2 million each year to facilitate the acquisition of shared commercial real estate. Again, the focal point for today's webinar is on the microgrants and the loan fund, and we'll get into a lot more detail about each of these funding opportunities in a moment. A question for everyone who's in attendance today, if you don't mind letting us know in the chat, what type of organization are you? Are you a nonprofit, a 501c3, maybe operating under a fiscal sponsor, or are you a for-profit business such as an LLC, an S Corp, a partnership, etc.? We do want to find out to make sure that you're applying for the right microgrant in the right location. Great, I see that there's a good mix of nonprofits and for-profit organizations in the room. If you're interested in a technology and equipment microgrant and you're a nonprofit organization, you will apply through the submittable portal that is operated for the Miami Open for Business initiative. Please note that this is a different submittable platform than the Miami Foundation typically uses for its funding opportunities. So if you are a nonprofit organization interested in a microgrant, you will apply at this portal. If you are a for-profit business and you're interested in a microgrant, then you will navigate to the portal that's operated by our community lending partner, Partners for Self-Employment. That website is miamiofbloans.org. I'll be sure to put both of these links in the chat so that you can save them for later accessing. You can also always access any of these application links from the main Open for Business website on the Miami Foundation page. If you are looking for a low interest loan, regardless of whether you are a nonprofit or a for-profit organization, you will apply for a loan at that same miamiofbloans.org portal. We'll share a little bit more information about what each of these opportunities constitutes, but want to make sure that you're applying in the right place. You may wonder whether you can apply for both a grant and a loan. In any given funding cycle, we encourage you to apply. You are welcome to apply for more than one opportunity. However, once you receive funding within that category, if you receive a grant or a loan, you cannot continue to apply for the type of funding that you have already received. So if you are not awarded in this round of funding, we do encourage you and you are welcome to reapply. We are excited to offer 2 additional funding cycles each year for the next 2 years. So that'll be a total of 5 funding cycles through 2024. You may want to know whether you can apply for more than one category or one use case or purpose in a grant. Not at this time, so that we can serve as many organizations with funding as possible. So I'll detail within the microgrant category whether you can apply for hardware, for software, or for equipment. Please note that the microgrant opportunity does have a deadline of Monday, November 7th, right before midnight, while the loan fund will continue to accept applications on a rolling basis and will fund them within 2 to 10 business days of receiving your full loan application. So we encourage you to get your microgrant application in sooner. All applications, we will wait to receive them until scoring and making funding decisions, whereas the loan fund, your loan application will be processed on a rolling basis. In order to be eligible for a Miami Open for Business funding opportunity, you must be a small nonprofit organization or a small business located in and serving Miami-Dade County. You do not necessarily need to have a brick and mortar location, but your organization does need to provide a good or service locally in Miami-Dade County. In addition, the organization must be owned by or led by an individual from a historically underserved background, consistent with the funder guidelines and our goal to provide access to capital for populations of entrepreneurs who have been historically left out from capital access opportunities. As such, the organization must be led by either a Black owner, Latino owner, somebody who is LGBTQ, a veteran, or person with disabilities. In addition, the organization must be operational for at least 2 years. While you may not have all of your business documentation dating back 2 years, such as your SunBiz registration or your Miami-Dade County business tax receipt, as long as you have some documentation that shows that you were operational, whether a business bank account, a paid lease, etc. This will help you comply with the 2-year minimum requirement. In addition, for the grant and the loan opportunity, your business must have an annual gross revenue or operating budget of $1 million or less to ensure that we are providing access to capital to the smallest of small businesses in Miami-Dade County. While your business, I've received a question in the chat about the business location relative to where services are rendered. If you can prove and provide substantiation that the majority of your product and services benefit and go to Miami-Dade clients, this may be permissible, or if you can prove any other business address in Miami-Dade County, that may also be a possibility. While this prior slide that I've just shared with you details the basic core requirements that you must meet in order to be able to apply for an opportunity, I'm now going to share the scoring and reviewing criteria that we will use to weight and to prioritize funding applications that we receive from eligible applicants. So one of the things that we will weigh is whether the organization is well represents a historically underserved community among multiple dimensions. So for instance, at a minimum, the organization must be led by someone from a historically underserved background, but we also want to understand whether there's additional dimensions of or intersections of these identity facets. We also want to better understand how your small business provides a good or service that benefits the local community. So businesses who provide items such as adult entertainment, alcohol, firearms, check cashing, pawn shops, etc., are not eligible. Similarly, if the primary objective of your organization is to export or provide services overseas, you are similarly not going to be as competitive as an organization or a business that provides a good or a service that benefits the local community. In addition, when we review applications, we will be assessing whether the organization has strong organizational and financial capacity. For example, the organization has a track record of using funds appropriately, and the business has a sufficient projected future revenue and cash flow so that they can continue operating. In the case of a nonprofit organization, sufficient projected fundraising. This is especially important as we think about extending loans to organizations and we assess the organization's ability to repay that loan into the future. We also want to make sure that we're awarding funds to organizations that have properly incorporated and are abiding by all local rules and regulations. As such, you will need to be properly registered with a Miami-Dade County business tax receipt, also known as a business tax license, and registered with any other according municipalities in which the business might operate. In addition, we will be prioritizing and giving scoring points during the review process to organizations that are employer firms that offer high quality jobs. So for example, if your small business provides employment opportunities, including those with at least a living wage, fringe benefits, and prioritizes employing individuals from the adjacent community or from people from historically underserved or marginalized backgrounds, we will be able to give some preference to these organizations during the scoring process. This does not mean, however, that your organization must be an employer firm in order to be eligible. Sole proprietorships are still eligible to apply for grants and loans through Miami Open for Business. We also, during the scoring and review of your application, want to understand how you will use the funding to transform the growth potential of your organization. Especially since we do not operate or are familiar with all of the industries that you represent, we'll want to understand how this funding will significantly impact your organization. Will you be able to open another location, hire additional staff, increase the amount of widgets that you produce? Please help us understand how this investment will transform the trajectory of your organization. And lastly, during the scoring process, we will also assess whether the organization is located in one of the following Miami Open for Business target neighborhoods. While it is not required for your organization to be located in one of these neighborhoods to apply for a microgrant or a loan, we will be giving some points during the scoring process to nonprofit and small businesses that are located in Homestead, Florida City, Richmond Heights, West Perrine, Alapata, Overtown, Liberty City, Little Haiti, Opelika, Miami Gardens, North Miami, and North Miami Beach. The effort here is to prioritize neighborhoods that have been historically underinvested, and this list of communities was drawn from the list of Miami-Dade County's targeted urban areas that have long been a focal point for reinvestment, especially after decades of disinvestment and blight. You may wonder if you can access resources to help you with your application. With that said, we're very proud to share that our community lending partner, Partners for Self-Employment, has a team of technical assistance providers available to help with your application. You may email the team at miamiofbloans.org and set up a brief appointment to work with a loan counselor to get your, for instance, financial paperwork in order, to ask any questions about the application, etc. We highly encourage you to send an email with your situation, or if you prefer, you can phone the number that I've placed in the chat and make an appointment for technical assistance. Starting early next year, we will have a lot of technical assistance resources in place to help you with your application and help connect you to service providers. Until then, we really encourage you to reach out to one of the many small business consulting and support services here in South Florida. For instance, the Small Business Navigator that is led by FIU provides no cost one-on-one consulting and workshop series. Prospera is an organization that specializes in Latino-led businesses. Branches has a micro business program, as does Catalyst Miami. And so if you have not already connected to one of these organizations, we highly recommend checking them out and seeing if they can help you with your application. I do see that somebody has tried to call the open for business number at Partners for Self-Employment. If you have left a voicemail, they will be sure to contact you in a standard, I do believe it's 48 business hours. If you've not heard back from them, I definitely recommend sending an email with your contact information. We are on the receiving end of a lot of inbound inquiries, but I do know that they are setting up 15-minute appointments and have availability each week. There's not necessarily a waiting list to get one of those appointments, so do definitely reach out via email and they will send you some times that they are available. Excellent. So we're about to dive into the specifics about our grant and loan offerings, but I want to make sure that you can access all of these rich resources on our website, which are also available in Spanish and Haitian Creole. For each of the 3 financial products, we have a one-page flyer with all of the core details. You can provide this to any partners, especially if you're here on behalf of an organization that serves small businesses. We also have an FAQ document that answers very common questions that we receive via email. Definitely recommend checking out the FAQ document if you have any questions. We also have a program overview document that details the entire program at large. And lastly, for each of the 3 financial products, we have a detailed funding guidelines document where we walk through the eligibility parameters, the scoring criteria, and we also provide you with a preview of all the application questions so you can get started on your responses before you enter the application portal. Highly recommend doing this so that you don't lose any progress in the application portal. While both portals are designed to save your progress, definitely take a look at the application questions as they appear in the funding guidelines document before starting your application. I do see a question in the chat about the priority neighborhoods. If your physical space is located outside of them, but you do provide services in those neighborhoods, and that is an excellent question. What I would do is recommend describing with regard to the good or service that your organization provides. Do explain that this is one of the areas that you target as part of your services. You will not necessarily be treated the same as an organization that is operating out of that location, but this will be taken into consideration as we assess how your organization provides a good or a service that benefits the local community. I see a very similar question from another attendee in the Q&A. So please indicate when we ask what good or service your organization provides and the impact that you have on the surrounding community. Please do include that in your response, even if the physical address of your organization is not within one of those communities. Great questions. So now I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into the 2 funding opportunities we will discuss today, the micro grant and the loan. The micro grant for technology and equipment is designed to provide your organization with funding to purchase a fixed asset such as hardware or software or equipment and machinery. This is a 1-year grant and it'll be comprised of a one-time payment. However, you can request in your funding request items that will live beyond 1 year. So for instance, a subscription for software that you will use for more than 1 year. The deadline to apply for this particular funding cycle is fast approaching. It is Monday, November 7th. And if you're not prepared to apply just yet, we will offer at least 2 funding cycles each year for the next 2 years. In terms of what you can include in your funding request, we have 2 different types of technology you can choose from. You can request hardware, so laptop computers, iPads, routers, Wi-Fi equipment, Wi-Fi extenders, cameras, copy machines, fax machines, printers, 3D printers. There's a whole suite of hardware and many of the items that you typically think about when you think about technology. In addition, we're also extending the ability for you to have a funding request for software. So subscriptions and multi-year licensing for things like Microsoft Office, QuickBooks, Square, Shopify, a fundraising database, a CRM or customer relationship management database. What exactly that software is will depend on your industry, but this is an opportunity to make sure that some of those costs for technology that you need to deliver your business could potentially be taken care of through the grant. The third category of funding under the microgrant offering is equipment and machinery. This is going to comprise a wide array of tools or equipment for your business. For example, a photography business may ask for additional lighting and props. An arts and culture organization may ask for additional set design equipment. Perhaps you operate a laundromat and you're interested in obtaining more washers and dryers. Exactly what those materials and equipment look like will vary from one business to the next. But what we would like to understand is how the acquisition of these assets and your ownership of them will benefit your business. For this funding opportunity, you do need to request one of the 3 funding items. So either hardware, either software, or equipment and machinery. Take this opportunity to compile vendor estimates and prepare a proposal for one of the 3 items. You may request more than one unit, but it must fall within these one of the 3 categories. I do want to also share a note about the funding dollar amounts. We're encouraging folks to request funds anywhere as low as $100 all the way up to $20,000. As you can imagine, we will receive quite a number of requests for $20,000. We may not be able to fulfill every grant request at the full amount intended so that we can reach as many organizations as possible. What we ask you to do is think very judiciously about which of the 3 categories your business could benefit from. Put forth a funding request with a vendor estimate for one of these 3 categories and complete the rest of the proposal and narrative questions that accompany it. I'm going to pause for a moment and answer some questions in the chat. If you already have software that you can pay for, can you ask for money to continue paying them? That's a really good question. If this is a piece of software that you need to continue to pay for the next year, even though you already have it, that is okay. If you are asking for retroactive funding to pay back, for instance, an invoice that you have already paid for a software vendor, that would not count. So it does not necessarily need to be new software that you are buying for the first time. However, this grant is not intended to cover past expenses that you have already paid for. The second question is whether you can apply for both hardware and software in the same application. No, you must choose from one of these 3 categories, either an assortment of hardware technology items, different software subscriptions, or equipment and machinery. In your application, we will ask you to detail exactly how you plan to use this asset and how it will benefit your business. The questions are very similar, but slightly different based on whether you are a nonprofit organization or a for-profit business. In essence, we want to better understand for nonprofits the purpose of these funds. How will you use them? How will you purchase them? How will you deploy them? We also want to understand the impact that this will have on your organization. This relates to whether the organization will grow, whether you will be able to serve more people from the community, etc. This also helps us understand the growth trajectory and the future vision for your organization. And lastly, any exceptional societal impacts or benefits. As mentioned before, if you serve clients from one of the 7 Miami Open for Business target neighborhoods, this would be a great place to indicate that in your application. For the for-profit businesses, the questions are slightly similar. We want to better understand the background of your business, especially since we can't represent all of the industries from which we receive applications. Help us understand what it is that you do, your target market, how they will benefit from the product or service that you provide, a description of your team, whether you plan to expand your team, And with regard to this asset, how you plan to invest the funds, how you will use it to help grow your business, meet increased demand, etc. And lastly, very similar as to the nonprofit organizations and in accordance with our scoring criteria, we want to understand how your organization benefits the community, whether that is a visa processing firm, or perhaps you make safety handlebars for for elderly folks to age in place. No matter what your business is, there is a way that you provide a good or a service that helps meet a consumer market. Help us understand what that is as part of the scoring of your application. You will also have to attach some documentation accompanying your responses to the narrative questions on the prior slide. This looks slightly different depending on whether you are a nonprofit or a for-profit applicant. We encourage all for-profit applicants to include a vendor estimate with the exact cost and proposal of what you are submitting a funding request for, as well as, excuse me one moment, as well as financial projections for future revenue, a copy of your business tax return, and a roster of employees to help understand the growth of your organization. If you do not have these documents prepared already, such as the financial projections, you can access templates for these documents on the resources page of the miamiofbloans.org website. If you've never prepared financial projections before, you can also reach out to the Miami OFB Loans team and set up that 15-minute loan counseling or technical assistance appointment that we spoke about a couple of minutes ago. Excellent. This is going to conclude the portion of the info session about the microgrants for technology and equipment. I'd love to pause for just a moment and answer any other questions you might have before we continue to talk about the low interest loan fund. Please feel free to put your question in the chat, in the Q&A, or if you cannot access the chat, please feel free to raise your hand and ask your question out loud. Okay, great. I don't see any additional questions that are coming in, so we're going to go ahead and, okay, I do see a question. Thank you, Melissa. So the first round of funding, no funding for the microgrants will be dispersed any sooner than December. We will wait until the deadline elapses on November 7th to receive all applications and then begin scoring and reviewing them using the same criteria. And so the for-profit organizations, it is likely that you will find out that you are awarded and receive funds by the end of the year. Nonprofit organizations will find out if they've been funded by the end of the year, but will not be able to receive funds until January, probably 3rd, when the foundation reopens for financing and processing of payments. A question was received whether you started your business in January. The 2-year mark starts approximately 2 years from the date of submission. So right now, it's approximately October 2022. Your organization must have been operating and have some sort of proof of it being operational since October 2020. If your organization has not yet met the 2-year mark, we will be issuing funds over the next 2 years through 2024. So if your organization meets that 2-year mark during a future funding cycle, you are welcome to apply. Somebody has asked whether they can apply with different locations or per location. This is not a franchise. That's an excellent question. The applications are based on the organization or the small business. So if those multiple locations are in the same name and the same organization, you're limited to one application. If those different locations truly do have a different business name and or a different business model and are meeting a different customer segment, then you may apply for more than one. However, if they are all held under the same organizational name, you may only apply one application per organization. We received another question if there's any preference given to funding fixed hardware assets over funding yearly subscriptions. That is an excellent question, and we are not giving preference to one over the other. The elements that your proposal will be scored on will be the scoring criteria mentioned earlier. For instance, if you are applying for a software that is really going to help transform your accounting by virtue of QuickBooks, and this will really help give the organization formal bookkeeping capabilities, that's a very strong case to make versus simply buying a laptop that does not have strong substantiation. And so it's more important to have a quality application and proposal versus requesting one of these categories. The other item that will come into play is the dollar amount requested. We do want folks to submit realistic and attainable funding amounts. As mentioned, we will not be able to honor every single $20,000 funding request. We are issuing a total of $800,000 through the grants. So we encourage you to be judicious and choose the funding category that works best with your business or your nonprofit's plan. Another question has been asked if it's the same address but a different model. Again, the answer is whether the organization or the small business is the same one. So everything under that roof or location is operating under the same business name. That it constitutes one business, even if the business model is slightly different. So for example, if it is one beauty salon and you do have some nails and some lashes on site, if both of those product lines belong to the same business with the same name, that's going to constitute one business. And to ensure that we can maximize funding opportunities for those who apply, we are awarding just one grant and one loan per business at a time. So if you do not receive a grant or a loan, you can continue to apply for one. But after you receive a grant or a loan, that business is not eligible to continue applying for any funding category that they've already received. Received another question about when the grants will be awarded. So we will award the grants after the November 7th deadline, at least 1 month subsequent to allow ample time for scoring. For-profit businesses will find out if they were selected and be paid, or the vendor will be paid on their behalf by the end of the year. Nonprofit organizations will also find out, but payment will not be issued until the beginning of January, when the Miami Foundation can begin processing grant payments again for the fiscal year. Thank you all for these questions. This is really helpful. Please continue to put them in the chat or the Q&A box. In the interest of time, I'm going to segue to the ABLE Loan Fund, and we can tell you a little bit about the low interest loans that we are offering. While many small businesses may choose to self-fund their finances and not take on any debt financing, there can actually be some advantages to taking out a business loan. For example, the interest rate for all of our loans will remain at 3%, regardless of your organization's risk profile or the type of asset that you're requesting to be financed. Compare this to, for instance, a credit card, a personal or business credit card, where the interest rate can range anywhere from 18 to 25%. In addition, you do not need to have a minimum credit score to be eligible for this loan opportunity, but the repayment of this loan will help build your personal and your business credit. We're very excited to also extend this loan opportunity to our nonprofit organizations who simply will not collect any interest or charge interest on the loan. It can be very challenging for nonprofit organizations to get loan financing, and we are proud to offer this to nonprofit organizations with no interest added. The repayment period for the loan will vary anywhere from 1 to 5 years, depending on what asset you are underwriting. Applications will be accepted and will be financed on a rolling basis through the 1st of December, when we will stop processing applications for the year. Please note that many loans will be dispersed directly to the vendor on behalf of the borrower. So for example, if you're financing a vehicle, Partners for Self-Employment will pay the place that you are purchasing the vehicle from and pay the DMV for any relevant title and or registration fees. In order to apply for a loan, you will create an account at the miamiofbloans.org portal. Please note that this is the same portal where for-profit businesses will apply for microgrants as well. In terms of what you can request a loan for, there are a couple of primary use cases. I do anticipate that most loan requests will come in for the first 3 items, but I will detail all of them so you have an idea of what to expect. The first of which is that you can finance the purchase of a vehicle to be used for commercial purposes, whether that is a truck, a passenger van, a bus, a trailer, a forklift, a food truck, etc. It must be used exclusively for commercial purposes. In essence, if it has wheels on it and it can travel from point A to point B, this does include an airplane, which I have been asked about. This is a vehicle and you can seek financing for it through the Miami Open for Business Loan Fund. Another common loan fund purpose is going to be remodeling or renovation. Let's say that you've been in a location for some time, but you would like it to make it more visually attractive to prospective customers. You can take out a loan as mentioned on the prior slide, and as low as $5,000 all the way through to $100,000 to finance capital improvements or leaseholder improvements to a space. If you are financing improvements to a space that you lease, though, you must have control of that property for the duration of the loan. So for instance, if your commercial lease expires in the next 2 years, the repayment period for the leaseholder improvements cannot extend beyond that 2 years. In terms of what you can include, painting, knocking down walls, redesign, plumbing, electricity upgrades. Maybe you want to incorporate more ADA friendly protocols into your space. Maybe you want to increase or expand to an adjacent store. Anything that will help your facility remodel or renovate can be included in the loan. The third most common use case is going to be an inventory loan. Perhaps you would like to service a larger contract, but you need to purchase a greater quantity of bulk goods, whether that be t-shirts, textiles, raw materials, etc. As long as it is not raw food or beverage items such as milk or anything that can spoil, you can take on a low interest loan to finance the procurement of that inventory. This is often helpful in a case where you would like to deliver on a larger contract, but you can't fulfill that order without getting a little bit of money fronted in advance, often called contract financing. We would be happy to extend you that inventory loan, which you can repay upon successful delivery of the contract. There are 3 additional use cases or purposes for the loan fund, albeit likely less common. For instance, if your organization took on high interest or an extractive loan to purchase assets, such as a high interest loan for purchasing lawnmowers, for purchasing washer dryers, for purchasing a coal oven, etc. As long as your organization still owns those assets, you can refinance and pay off that higher interest debt so that you no longer are encumbered by that debt and will get you to a more manageable monthly payment. You can also seek financing to transfer a business between generations. Maybe there's a business owner who is aging out or retirement, or a business is at threat of closing were it not for a new owner to come in and purchase the business. And lastly, we will also provide financing to convert a business to a worker cooperative or a shared equity model. So for example, a business owner is retiring and thinking about selling the business to the employees. You can take on some financing to assist you with the conversion of that business to a cooperatively owned business. I'm going to pause for a second and make sure that we address some of the questions in the chat. Someone has asked if we fund religiously affiliated organizations. Yes, we do. Those would be under the category of a nonprofit organization. In the application, you can denote whether you are a 501c3, a school, a government, a religious entity, or operating under a fiscal sponsor, and your application will be treated as that of a nonprofit organization. I've received a question, can an inventory loan be used to purchase inventory for an e-commerce retail store? Yes, I do believe so. I've provided that. It's an excellent question. If the retail store, if it is located in Miami-Dade County, it is likely that a lot of your customers may be located outside of Miami-Dade County, in which case you'll want to substantiate in your application how the small business that you operate through the e-commerce benefits or has any sort of benefit for local community. But the idea is that, yes, you can take on an inventory loan to purchase inventory for your retail store. For example, just to provide another example related to that question, if, for instance, you have an e-commerce store that is primarily used to export goods overseas, then you would not have a very strong application to seek inventory, an inventory loan, given that the beneficiaries of that are located and destined primarily overseas. Okay, thanks for clarifying that the e-commerce store does sell nationwide. Again, you'll just want to share a little bit more context about your business. For instance, if you at least employ some folks from the local community, as mentioned previously, those are not eligibility requirements that you must fulfill in order to get funding. But I do want to caution that some of the strongest proposals will exemplify, local employment opportunities and or provide a good or service that remains in the adjacent community. Thank you all for the really great questions. Before I wrap up this section on the loan fund, I just want to pause and see if there's any other questions about the purposes or the allowable use cases for taking out an ABLE loan. Great. I don't see any other questions coming in at this moment, but we will pause and answer them as they do come in. The application questions for an ABLE loan are very similar to those that you saw for the for-profit microgrant. In essence, to help us better understand your organization, target market, and or client, how they benefit from the products and services that you provide. Help us understand how you will invest the funds that you apply for, whether this is a renovation loan to build out and make your space more inviting, whether this is a inventory loan to service that really great contract that you just landed with CVS or Whole Foods, whatever that may be, really help bring it to life in the narrative questions so that we get a sense of how you will use the Open for Business funding for good. And of course, the question around societal impact or benefit, so that we understand whether your organization provides any type of economic impact to the surrounding community, in addition to the impact that the asset will have on your own business. Since with loans, there is an obligation to repay this funding at the end of the loan, throughout the life of the loan term, we will be asking for more loan fund documentation than we do in the micro grant funding opportunity. All loans are personally guaranteed, so you must provide ID and a proof of social security card if you are a US citizen, so that we can verify the identity of the person who is guaranteeing the loan. We do need to access a copy of personal financial statement and income tax return. On the business side of things, you do need to provide a proof of funds for what you will be taking the loan out for. So for example, if you are planning to renovate your space, help us understand how much you will be spending on items such as contractor fees, plumbing, fixtures, labor, materials, etc. And then there are a couple of items related to the business's finances that we would like to see to not only understand your financial positioning to date, but also your financial projections for the future. If your organization is interested in a loan and you're from a nonprofit organization, you will not need to furnish a financial projections or a business tax return, given that you do not file taxes. In addition, the personal documentation will look very different since the nonprofit organization is not owned by an individual owner. In lieu of these items with an asterisk, you will have to provide a list of your top prospective and or committed funds, as well as your Form 990. And of course, as with most of our funding opportunities, we want to make sure that you are legally operating in Miami-Dade County and that you authorize access to any additional tax return transcripts, so that we can ensure that the organizations to whom we are issuing funding are abiding by local and federal laws by filing taxes as necessary. If you have not filed your taxes recently or have had an exception for doing so, we may also accept some other forms. I really encourage you, if that's the case for you, to email openforbusiness@miamiofbloans.org, and they'll be able to help provide you with more guidance on how to complete the loan application. Before we adjourn and open it up for any remaining questions, I do need to caution the way that the program was designed with input from our funder. The Open for Business grants and loans do need to be used to cover the asset and the acquisition of that asset itself. As such, Open for Business funding cannot cover things like staffing, payroll, overhead, utilities, rent, etc. This funding has really helped and positioned to design the organization to buy and own their own assets moving forward. Similarly, you cannot ask for funding from Miami Open for Business to cover items that are already offered through other opportunities. So for instance, you cannot take out a loan to purchase laptops or machinery for which you can submit a micro grant. Similarly, you cannot ask for a vehicle through a micro grant or items that are typically covered through our loan fund. And lastly, while we did not discuss our real estate funding opportunity here today, you cannot seek real estate funding to cover things like remodeling, which we offer through our loan fund. This concludes the formal aspect of the presentation. You all have been great asking questions periodically throughout. We do take all of the questions from these info sessions, and we will be updating the FAQ document on our website with them. As a reminder, the deadline to submit a micro grant is fast approaching on Monday, November 7th, and we will continue to offer funding opportunities each year for the next 2 years, at least twice annually. If you have any other questions, I'll remain here on the line for a couple more moments. Please feel free to put them in the chat or the Q&A box, and we appreciate you being here with us this afternoon. I've received a question on whether the 2-year operational requirement is also in effect for the ABLE loan fund, and that is correct. The 2-year minimum operational requirement is in effect for the microgrant, the ABLE loan, as well as our collective real estate down payment assistance program. I've received a question about the real estate, a separate info session. That is correct. We offered 2 informational sessions, 90 minutes long, about the collective real estate ownership opportunity. If that is something you're interested in, I'm going to put a link in the chat. Please visit our website. If you scroll down to the bottom of the page, you can see the info session. There is one recording and there is a slideshow. You can watch this and let us know if you have any questions about the collective real estate ownership funding opportunity. Received a question. So the grant amount would also include the shipping cost. So that's a great question. If you are purchasing your items from a vendor online, that would include the full price of procuring the equipment or the machinery from that vendor. Another attendee has asked whether the business physically has to be in Miami-Dade County if it serves and produces work in Miami-Dade County. That, yes, correct. The business does not physically have to be located in Miami-Dade if the primary good or service is destined for residents or individuals in Miami-Dade County. You may need to provide proof of that. So for instance, work orders, invoices, or anything. If you can prove that the majority of your income is earned and your clients are in Miami-Dade County, you may also be eligible for this. If you're a for-profit business, I encourage you to email miamiofbloans.org to triple check that. Excellent. I'm still on the line if anybody has any additional questions, or you can also send them to one of our inboxes at the Miami Foundation or at the miamiofbloans.org website. Thank you all for attending today. I'll remain on the line for just a few more minutes, but this concludes the formal portion of our presentation. This will be uploaded on our website along with the other sessions. Really appreciate you being here and thank you for your interest in Miami Open for Business.